Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight, we are going to be talking about life with our children. What did we expect? What did we receive? How did that play out for you? We're going to be talking about a New Age children's books today. Today, my guest is Charles Schoen. He's written a series of books called Adventures with Charlie about his life with his child. Can we see that life with our children has truly changed over the decades? We're now becoming more engaged. We're becoming more centered. We are helping and assist them along their path versus the 40s and the 50s and 60s when I grew up. It was, hey, go outside, kind of make your own way in life, and you can figure it out. Truly, the world is changing. Children have had a lot of disabilities. They've had a lot of struggles. They come into this world with something that says, I'm going to come into life, but it's going to be a little bit different for me. And how can I find the tools to access what I need? How can I find the support in my family members and a team? And also, too, how can I enjoy the life that's around me? That's what we're going to be talking about today with Charles. Charles, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
So glad to have you. When you shared about your book with your son, Adventures with Charlie, it's what I really find is so important is, we sit down and we say, this is my child. And then when you're given a baby, when it's born, and you expect it to be in such perfection, and don't you think sometimes a picture of what you thought was going to be, what you've received, and what do you do now is just like so much in your face you don't know what to do?
Well, especially since Charlie was born with special needs, we didn't have access to any manuals except the ones that say what to expect your first year. And after 3 months, he started not hitting milestones. The pediatrician picked up on it and did an MRI and found out he had a condition called agenesis of the corpus callosum. It's a mouthful, but what it means is that the band of fibers that connects the left and right hemisphere did not form in his brain. So he had a defect, and that kind of just said, well, he's probably going to have, he already had low muscle tone, he's probably going to have developmental delays. We really don't know how he's going to do. And so after about 6 months of reading the books and getting frustrated with all the things he couldn't do or wasn't doing, we put the books away and just really focused on what he could do. And that really made a complete attitude change on focusing on what he was doing. Even if it was small and minuscule and only we noticed it, it was progress, and that's all we were looking for.
Don't you think that truly, Charles, over the decades, it has changed how we support our children that need some extra help? Because I can remember being a Girl Scout in the 60s, if a child had something that was developmentally wrong, a mental handicap, a physical handicap, they were put into a home. They weren't cared for at home. That was just the way it was. I mean, I can't even remember ever going to anyone's home that had anyone that was taking care of their children. Because we would go as Girl Scouts to the places, with the kids and then take them on camp and all this other stuff. But if we look at it, when did that shift really occur? I think that shift probably happened in the last 10 to 15 years. Because if we're looking at even the 90s, people were still looking for, my child needs help, and where can they go? Versus, how can I help my child?
I would agree. I would agree. probably started to happen around the mid-'90s when people's attitudes started to change. Yes, and it is a different journey. And when I talk about Charlie's disabilities, Charlie is nonverbal. He signs and gestures to communicate. He does use a little communication device to help him put some words together. And he also is in a wheelchair, so he requires care 24/7. And and to your point, years ago, somebody would have used the term, well, he's just a vegetable. He can't talk. He can't get up and walk. Put him in a home, put him in a bed, and, turn out the lights and, go your way. And I think that's the whole point of writing these books, is because there are the things that I take Charlie to do. We run half marathons together. He plays baseball. We go to restaurants. He goes to school. He goes to the barber shop. He's got friends all over town. And that's why I wrote them, to celebrate not only him, but also the people that have been so good to him and have been a rich part of his life. And that's how it's hard to celebrate a baseball coach with a adult cover book. But doing it with a children's book, it celebrates all of the players that help them play baseball. It helps the coach who's organized it over the last 15 years, or whether it's the barber who has a great relationship with him and they cut up and play together when he's in the barber shop. It's just all about those type of things. It's not super exciting, but it does show, hey, you can live a meaningful life even when you have some physical, mental, and speaking challenges. You can communicate and have friends everywhere.
Yeah, it's really celebrating, that unconditional love. I mean, everybody's looking for, these spiritual answers. What is my mission? What is my purpose? Blah, blah, blah. Where am I going? And truly, you're just looking to connect with another soul. Isn't that what really Charlie is about, is how can he connect to your soul? He doesn't have to say, I'm going to go the old way, social media likes and all that other stuff, or I'm going to go the old way, I'm going to turn around and fix your house and it'll be in perfection, or, you know what I mean, those old ways of climbing the ladder, so to speak. He's just shining his light, isn't he?
Well, you are exactly right. I was talking with somebody the other day, and we were out at a restaurant, and all Charlie wants to do is say hi. He just he doesn't meet a stranger. And so we're at the restaurant, and this older couple came and sat down next to us, and Charlie's waving and waving and waving and waving. And the lady looks over at him and just looks away and wouldn't engage him. Then the waitress comes by out of the kitchen, and he's waving and waving at her, and she waves right back at him, and he about came out of his chair. He was so excited to have her respond to him. So you nailed it. He just wants to connect with people. That is his thing. And that is why I take him out so often, because now when we go to some regular restaurants, not just the Waffle House like the book is about, but when we go to other restaurants, we frequent them, then we get to know some of the staff and they get to know Charlie. I'll give them some of the books and kind of introduce them to our story, and then we all become friends. So it's been a great tool to introduce him to other people that have a lot of questions and don't really know a lot about him, but then they start to gain knowledge and get to know him, and he just builds friends wherever he goes. It's amazing.
Do you think, Charles, that it's I've noticed this from my work as I'm over 65, but I still notice a lot of elders. They shy away from that which they don't know, or they shy away from something that they're just not familiar with, just as you said, an older couple. Do you find that perhaps the younger people are very receptive to Charlie, and maybe the elders not?
I wouldn't stereotype it in that category. There may be some that are and some that aren't. Charlie has plenty of older friends. I teach Sunday school in a retirement home, and I would bring him once a month when I would go to teach the class, and I would bring him with me, and they loved him. They all just if I didn't bring him, they're all, where's Charlie? Where's Charlie? Where's Charlie?
Right.
So I just think some people do and some people don't. There are younger people that will ignore him. There are kids that will ignore him, and then there's some kids that will play peekaboo and wave at him at the restaurant and engage him, and he just loves that. And sometimes their parents will say, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to bother. I'm like, you're not bothering me. He's having a ball. That's why we're here.
Well, Charles,
the pancakes are great, but...
The books that you wrote is a series, and the one we were talking about today is Adventures with Charlie, Charlie and the Half Marathon, and Charlie Goes to School. And Charlie, how did you decide to be able to take him on a marathon? Because is that not, I looked at it, I said, he's just like, when you see in the book you share about him flying, in his wheelchair, I almost see it as this like a ray of sunshine, and it kind of streaks down the street and spreading all of its glitter. You know what I mean? Like all of its light.
Yeah.
And I think that's truly what you want to conceptualize is how can you spread unconditional love? It's like tossing seeds outside and not worrying about what will grow. Just know that you've shared. And I think he is, when he's going on the marathon, he's really reaching a lot of people to see and say, hey, life is really great. Look at me. Isn't that a wonderful story that you're trying to share there in that book?
It is a wonderful story, and the guys that I dedicated the book to are friends of mine, and we all first started pushing. He pushes his brother in Ironman competitions. Peace Boys is their name, but we started it from a guy named Dick and Rick Hoyt from Boston, and Dick was pushing his son Rick in the Boston Marathon in his wheelchair/jogger. And a friend of mine told me about it, and he said, we got to do this with Charlie. So we went out one November and Thanksgiving for the turkey trot they had in Atlanta that was a half marathon, and off we went and pushed him 13 and a half miles or 13.1 miles to, and then we just started doing them every year. And we've done, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so. It's been a lot of fun.
So exciting. And it's truly about how can you share the message of engaging everyone regardless of what they're on in their life. They could be having dementia or Alzheimer's. They could be having a chronic disease. They could be having disabilities. I think almost everybody in the world has something. It's just deciding how many veils are you hiding behind and owning your disability instead of celebrating who you are and what you can do, just as you share in the book. Yes?
I would agree. And, actually disability is not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when. When we're all born, we're all disabled. We can't take care of ourselves as we're babies. But as we grow and develop, some grow to a maturity and are able to function at an adult level and can take care of themselves and feed themselves and go to work and do all those things. But then as time marches on, as the older they get, then maybe they need a wheelchair or they need a walker or they need help or they need care. And so, as I say, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. If you live a long, long life, you'll probably have some disabilities in your life. Right. And the whole key is to not let those keep you from living a meaningful life, engaging with other people, being social, and just even for kids, it's just to be able to help them have, and that's kind of how I've approached Charlie. I just want to help you have the best life you can have, to the best of my ability.
Yeah. Charles, let's talk for a second about anger, because that is important. I think anytime someone, they could be going along in their life and something happens and they're just furious. They're furious with themselves, with the disability, with the disease, whatever might be showing up, with the loss. But then they're furious with God. They are downright furious because they felt like they were promised something or they had a vision that they were waiting to fulfill. Do you think that comes up in your knowing for some people?
It does, and anger, I think, is one of the 5 stages of grief. And so what you're talking about is the grief of expectations. Mm-hmm. So we obviously went through the grief process. And the last stage is acceptance. It doesn't necessarily all happen in the order that people know it, but it can have some anger in it, and that's one of the things that people ask questions of, why me, why me, why me? Now, I ask the same questions,
Right.
Why me? So it's a natural order of the human condition. The key is to get past the anger and get to that final place of acceptance so you can move on, even though you'll never fully move on, but at least you can be comfortable and comfortable in your space and where you are. And once I got to that place with Charlie, things really started to open up, because it's like you're going to have to push him in the wheelchair or a jogger if you want to do something with him, because that's the only way you're going to get to do it. So, again, anger is a natural progression when you have something that dies and you have grief, and it was our expectations were what died, but there's no funeral.
It's also, I think, our perception, because we're looking at the outside world. And surely what you were asked to do when you said, why me, and but God probably said, why not you? Why not? And I'm giving you a job, and are you willing to accept it? And you accepted it. So I think the idea is that can we celebrate it also in ourselves, that we were gifted this child? Just as I shared, could you celebrate the child with autism, But also,
right.
too, understand that you've been given a true gift. He's been given a gift of you, but you've also been given a gift of him. So it works both ways, right?
I would totally agree. And that's one of the things that I've discovered is that he has been a gift. I run a nonprofit that serves kids with special needs at the preschool level, and I've been in that job for 12 years. It's the longest job I've ever had. Mm-hmm. So it became my life. And I didn't start it. It was a program that Charlie was in, but I've been the director for 12 years, and he has been a gift. It was just wrapped in a way that I didn't know at first. Right. But I came to, like you said, to accept it and say, thank you, And it's been good for me. It's been good for Charlie. It's been a great combo, because he and I are very, very close.
What about your book that you talk about, Charlie Goes to School? Because everyone says you're not going to ever see a school. You'll never be educated. You'll never be able to go past, a baby's book. We've also heard people that have said things like that. So I'm sure you have heard that from other people. But yet Charlie goes to school and he learns and he knows, right?
He does. And he's probably cognitively on a 3.5, 4-year-old level, which is sufficient enough to be very communicative, and he understands the condition he has is called apraxia. He understands everything you're saying. He just can't get it from his brain to his mouth.
Right.
Okay? But he understands and he learns, and he's pretty smart. I mean, he's figured out how to communicate with his own sign language and gestures and things that rhyme and sound like, and all kinds of ways that he's figured out how to communicate. And I think I wrote that book because I had people say, now, is he in school? Mm-hmm. Thinking, yes, he is in school. And he's been in school, and he stayed in school all the way until his 22nd birthday. But, yeah, and I think that was one of the reasons I wrote it. Like, yeah, he goes to school. He's just like everybody else. Now, he may not be on the typical path that 90% of the kids in the school are on, but he's still right there with them, and he still got invited to prom twice by two girls that worked in the special ed area.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful that he was so accepted by the people around him. I'm sure that had a lot to do with you and being able to initialize Charlie into that system, but also, too, to be able to help educate the others around to be able to accept him, right?
Yes, and the schools were very accepting. They are today because the law requires them to be accepting, but also the kids are more accepting. It's not just because of the law. The kids want to volunteer in his classroom is one of their electives. They love having Charlie have lunch with them. They enjoy him, and the reason they enjoy him is because he's non-judgmental. Yeah. He sees the good in everybody. He doesn't see any differences in anyone, and that's his gift. It's like kind of a superpower. Yep. He doesn't see people with judgment. I do, you do, all see people with judgment. The minute we see them, we start making judgments about them. And he doesn't do that.
That's another book that you have to write, Charles. It has to be Charlie as a superpower. He needs a cape. He needs a big C on the front, and to be able to say, yes, I see you, I see you. Don't worry about all that other stuff, And that's so true, I think. Sometimes people are so judgmental of your hair, your body type, what you look like, how you present yourself, when that's really all of our facade that's on the outside. Our real true essence of who we are is deeper inside it. I always say that this human body is a vehicle that has brought us as a soul into this existence. So if we think of it that way, Charlie's soul is just as your soul is. It's just our vehicle is different. That's a great way to put it. And, one thing I think that these kids and adults as they grow with special needs bring us is a glimpse to see what God wants to show us, which is here's how unconditional love looks on the planet. Right. You guys are all contaminated, but I get a chance to every once in a while show you what unconditional love looks like, and I do it through these young children with special needs or adults with special needs. Just their whole attitude is just so much different. Yeah, I've always had this dream, Charles, and I'll share it here, is that I would be in a room and people would come in and they would be blinded of all of their senses. In other words, of smell, of sight, or of hearing, but they could still touch. And they would just be in a room and they would each join hands. And all they would do is feel the warmth of each other's hands. That's it, And we think, everybody would be, it just feels good. And everybody in the circle would just feel good. It's not like people would get up or be disgusted or walk away or be annoyed or whatever, or move away. They would all just join hands because all of their senses had been taken away, their judgment sources, Right. And all they could do was just feel each other's soul. Even if there was a homeless person next to you or someone that had AIDS on the other side or someone who was dying behind you, it was irrelevant because you were only feeling with hands. Don't you think that's what Charlie also, too, is sharing with others, is being blinded by all of that other stuff? I would totally agree. Yeah. No, it doesn't. He doesn't see color. He doesn't see anything. He really doesn't. He doesn't care. Yeah. And, it's kind of funny. I do laugh. The people that he likes the most are big, strong African-American men. That's his favorite person to go to. And anytime he sees, he lights up. It's so interesting. I love it. And we have a number of friends, especially like in one of the books about the Waffle House. And Charlie is the biggest fan. He asked me to go see Theo every day. Every day. Let's go to Waffle House and see Theo. And he's communicating it all with signs and gestures. Mm-hmm. And when he gets in there with him, he is screaming with delight because he loves Theo. And I think because he had that relationship so early in his life that it touched him so much because Theo was so good to him in the restaurant that it affected his. Then he sees everybody that looks similar to Theo and lights up about it because they're reminding him visually of his friend Theo. It's just, and the great thing about Charlie is because he's so pure and honest, that there's no judgment about it. He's not making fun of you. He's not saying something negative about you. He's telling you something positive, that this is my friend, and I want you to know you look like him. Right. Because that's the only way he can associate things. Mm-hmm. As I shared, about being in Girl Scouts, in the 60s, I can always remember, I myself don't see color or gender or any of that. Being in healthcare over 5 decades, my mind just doesn't even register. When they say something's wrong with someone, I say, I just don't see it. I don't know, So I, too, have a similar aspect as Charlie because it just doesn't resonate with me. It's sort of like, I don't get what y'all are talking about, because I can see the soul of the person. So I think that also, too, when children are introduced to other people that may have concerns like the elderly or memory or disease or disabilities or whatever, you take your pick, anything different than who they are, when they're introduced to someone different at a very early age, I think that's truly being able to expand their awareness, and it becomes part of them. I mean, I was born this way, My grandfather worked at a mental health hospital. It's just like, oh, cool, it just was that way for me. So I think that now we look in the year 2022, children are not exposed to other kids or other people that have these concerns because we've gotten so used to whitewashing their experiences that we've taken away. Don't go out in the yard, someone will hurt you. Don't go over here, those people are sick. Don't go over here, those people don't understand you. And we've really so sterilized what they're exposed to that I'm not sure that the kids going forward will be having so many experiences just as you and I did.
They may not, but I will say, because in public school, the kids are a part of, the kids with special needs are a part of the community. Now, they may not be a huge part of it, but they are there. And that's, the organization I run, we embed special ed teachers with kids with special needs in a typical preschool classroom so that they can learn alongside their peers. They're typically developing peers. But the beauty of it is the typically developing peers start to grow compassion and empathy because they've seen wheelchairs at the earliest age, and they're not afraid of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
can tell you there's a lot of kids that don't even know about what is a wheelchair and they move away. And we want people to come to instead of moving away, right?
Right, yes. And that's one of the beauties of where I work is that we are, in our small way, helping to break down some of those barriers. And when we first started, Charlie was in one of the first inclusion classes. The parents kind of looked at us cross-eyed because it was a little bit like integration. Mm-hmm. And they were, you're doing what? Putting a nonverbal wheelchair kid in my child's classroom? I mean, this is, his first stepping stone to Harvard. And by the end of the year, the next year, the parents were asking to have the special needs kids in their classrooms because they loved what it had taught their kids.
Yeah. And definitely your schools are unique where you are because I'm in New Orleans and it's not like that at all here. But I think that also, too, to seek out schools like what you're sharing.
Right. And we're just in Atlanta, but it could be anywhere. And I've tried to expand into other states and been referred to other areas, and it was interesting. I kind of got the old stiff arm of, that may work where you're from, but not here.
Right. Yes.
I was like, yes. Okay. Because everybody's so different down here than they are in Atlanta.
Right. I know. I think that the idea is that how can we become more compassionate people? That's truly what your books are about with you and your son, Charlie, is how can we open up to people and say, they're not going to hurt you, they're not going to take something from you, they're not going to demand something more of you than you can give, or whatever, whatever your preconceived notion that maybe your parents might have had from the past or your grandparents. In other words, don't drag those old stories into the present moment, do you think?
I would agree. And I think those are, we've seen a progression over the years of barriers coming down that were up for many, many years. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that does happen in this country is that we do move on. Has everything been perfect? No. But we have made a lot of progress from what was going on in 1940s, from what goes on today and how people are treated. It's completely different, and it's the same with people with special needs and disabilities. They're treated with more respect than they were back then, as you started the show saying they just put them away and put them in an institution and close the door.
Yeah. I think that we look at it, and so many mental health hospitals have closed. A lot of homes for children have closed, and people are not getting the help that they need at home right now either. So I think that some of them are in very abusive homes or where they're not being taken care of, and they just decide, I think, at many early ages, the soul just says, hey, I'm done with this. I'm checking out, and they leave the world much too early without, support and needs. Do you think that perhaps if we can become more compassionate people, that maybe these souls will start to stay around a little longer and we can learn from them?
Well, I do feel that we are becoming more compassionate. In Atlanta, we have a wonderful children's hospital, and I've been very involved there because Charlie had multiple surgeries on his back because he has really bad scoliosis. And so I've spent a lot of time at the hospital. I've raised a lot of money with him. And it's I can remember I would go to his surgeries and I would be in complete calm. And my mother would be like a nervous wreck. And I was like, he's safer there than he is in the backseat of my car on the highway.
Yeah.
Because they have such good care and they're doing so many great things to help these kids that have challenges or cancer or whatever their challenges are in the hospital. They have clowns that walk around and entertain the kids right before they go into surgery. It's absolutely wonderful what they do to make that the most welcoming, comfortable environment, not only for the children, but also for the parents. Yeah.
Yeah. When I had one of my children, she was 6 months old, and she was in Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, CHOP. And they did this very same thing, too. They were just so wonderful to the kids and the family members, and making sure it's okay. Only one parent could be with the child, but the other, it's okay. Don't worry about it. There's a McDonald's house across the street. They've got a room for you. In other words, like everything was so supportive. It was just, we're going to help you succeed, and this is the way. Just follow us. And isn't that the kind of team that you and Charlie had needed? Was people who said, it'll be okay, follow us. And as you went around the circle, you realized each team member had their place and their spoke in the wheel to really help support him to still be here.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I mean, especially his orthopedic surgeon that saved his life as he was curving at the spine and his lungs were becoming compromised. And he created this surgery where he put growing rods in his back so he could continue to grow and also have lung capacity. When we went to see him, Charlie was on oxygen 24/7. And after 6 hours after surgery in the ICU, they took the oxygen off.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And he's never been back on it since, except for the other surgeries. But I'm talking about just being, day to day, he was carrying around an oxygen tank on the back of his wheelchair because his stats were so low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think,
so, yeah,
Charles,
he saved his life.
Do you think, Charles, that in closing you can share how we can use these books to help younger children, even if they have disabilities or don't, to be able to see the world with different eyes? I think that's truly what your goal is in writing the books is that, hey, look at me, I'm cool, and you want to share about Charlie. And when you do that, you're sharing something else new about the world. So if you have disabilities already, you could say, hey, maybe I can do that. Let me go out and see. Or if a child has a disease, they could say, I have only a little bit of time, but maybe I could try that. Or others could say, well, maybe I can go help them try that. Isn't that the purpose of these books?
It is. And I'll tell you, when I wrote them, people said, well, how did you create these books? I said, you know what? They just came out of me. I didn't sit down with a purpose and go, now I'm going to write some children's books and we're going to save the world. It's, they came out of me. And then I sat on them for about 6 years trying to figure out, how do I get this published and where do I find an illustrator? And one day I was in the mountains up in North Carolina and I ran into two ladies that were selling books, and one of them was the illustrator and the other one was the publisher, and they were sisters. And I said, there's my team. And I went home and looked at her website, and her illustrations were exactly in my mind's eye what I had for these books. It could not have been more divine. And we we did all 5 of them. Took about 6-7 years to get them all done. It takes a lot of time, but they have just been wonderful, and I've loved working with them, and it's just been such a great experience. They're like family.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, it was such a pleasure to have you share with us about your son, Charlie, because I think it's such a wonderful gem to be able to open it up. It's almost, today as I'm speaking to you, I mean, you just come across with this conversation as it's delightful, it's eye-opening, it's heart-opening, you just feel elevated. You don't feel stuck in your day-to-day stuff. You feel, the world is a good place. And that's really what we want to be able to share by you sharing these New Age children's books is truly that's what we want to say is, wow, what is your magic all about? Tell me your life story. What is the magic? Isn't that what you want to say?
Yes, I would. And I'm actually writing a book about Charlie. Currently, I've got a coach that's helping me do it and co-authoring it. And we're exploring all of that of saying, hey, there weren't any manuals for me. This isn't necessarily a manual for you, but here's some experiences that I've had that you may be coming across and say, oh, good, there's somebody else who's been through this. I'm not the only one. And that's kind of part of the purpose of the book is to have other parents who finally get a diagnosis or something of their child and have it be a possible resource for them, just as in, hey, I'm not alone. There are other people who have walked this path before me, and here's one that I can read about and learn from and contact or ask questions or whatever. So it's taking what I've gotten and giving it back to others as others have given to me that helped me along my journey.
Absolutely, and that's the most important thing is that we open the door to say there's something else out there when we feel stuck in our world. And once we open up the door, we're not looking for someone to say, here's your box of rocks, create your path, and stay within these parameters. We're saying, no, here's a box of seeds. I don't know what they'll grow. Go out and enjoy the experience. And that's what you're sharing is how can you go out and share the experience once we can help you open your door to see something else, right?
I love it. Yes, that's a great way to put it. You say it very well.
I just absolutely love it. Charles, that I love the people. It's now in the springtime in the year 2022, and just yesterday, I had a bunch of seeds that I had bought, and I just dumped them all. Don't know what they were. Didn't look at the packages. Just dumped them all in a glass, let them soak for a little, take them outside, and plant them all in the dirt. And then when they grow, I look at the wonderment. Oh, my goodness, I wonder what that is. Instead of saying,
I love it.
Instead of saying I planted tomatoes, I'm going to sit here and watch and make sure that tomatoes show up how they look on the package and, then be disappointed or delight in it, whatever. I just delight in anything that comes up out of the ground. So I think that's truly about how we can celebrate our children. We have no clue. What if we took a child and we just said, I don't know what he's going to be? And not, oh, my goodness, he's looking at the moon all the time. He's going to be an astronomer. Oh, no, 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 no. And then he disappoints you, and then you're, disappointed. And so it's nope, every single day, be like that new seed, yes?
I would agree, and I have 2 younger children than Charlie. He's 26, and I have always tried to embrace them for whatever they wanted to do. It's what you want to do. And I guess that's because I had my expectations broken, which was fine now that I understand it. But the other thing is I just encourage them to do whatever it is they want to do and just try to do the best at it you can. And if you don't do it right the first time, it's okay. Hey, we're all learning here. So it has made me a whole lot, I think, better about supporting my other children in being encouraging to them versus discouraging.
Yeah. Don't you think that you're really teaching them to live in the present moment? I don't think Charlie gets up in the morning and says that this isn't on my way to the path to my legacy or my obituary or how many letters I'm going to have behind my name. I'm going to just live for today, right? And that's what he's teaching you.
He does.
How can you live in the present moment? Period. Right?
Well, he does. And he wakes up every day and says, I want to go to the barber shop or I want to go see Theo at Waffle House every day.
Yeah.
And we can't do it every day, but every day. And he'll stay and hound me about it all day long. He'll go open the door to the carport, point to the car, wants to get in the van. He's like, let's go. Come on, let's go.
An adventure in the world.
He wants to be out and about.
Yep.
He loves it. So, it's been a great journey. It hasn't been easy. It's not easy, but it has been great, and I wouldn't trade it.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today, to be able to celebrate your child, Charlie. Could you share with the listeners how to find out more information about the books and much of your work?
Yes, it's. I have a little website, and it just is adventureswcharlie.com, all one word. I put the W in because they wanted $2,000 for the word with, and I said, it's not worth that. This isn't really a profit center, so to speak. I pretty much give them away most of the time. But, if they want to order them or contact me or whatever, it's adventureswcharlie.com, just one word. And you can also find the organization that I work for is alckids.org. Alpha Lima Charlie Kids.org. It stands for the Adaptive Learning Center, but our website is short. And that has information about Charlie's books as well and what our organization does to support kids with challenges in Atlanta.
Very good. Well, Charles, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today. I hope that parents will say, I'm going to just read this book to my child and let them know that the world is a wonderful place, and let it see how they take it and what they will be able to go with forth also, too, to live their own life, yes?
Absolutely. I think that would be wonderful. And I appreciate you having me on, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you for taking time to talk with me about it today.
So happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining us, Charles.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jeanette.
If you'd like more information about Charles Schoen, again, the book is Adventures with Charlie. Charlie Goes to School we spoke about, and Charlie in the Half Marathon today. And these are in a series of books about Charlie. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to the website for more information. Also, please click on the link for Charles's company that he works with, and be able to find out more information about the work they do with children, how you can perhaps purchase more books for your school or your business or maybe your organization, and be able to also donate to Charles's work. It's about being able to say, how can we start to share with our children at a very young age about children who are a little bit different than the perfect model of what we believe a child should be, how they should go through their life, and what their life should be all about. What happens when someone is a little bit outside the lines? They are perhaps having such a different experience, and we want to be able to celebrate them at every moment. How can we help everyone support their soul, body, mind, and spirit with compassion and empathy? We need to teach this to our children. So truly, how do you do that? New Age children's books. Check out Adventures with Charlie, and it definitely is something to help you to be able to engage your children in a different conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit dr.jeanette-gallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.